What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by your favorite beat reporter, Chris Fedor. What's going on, Chris? How was your day today?
Great, man. A whole lot of soccer watching today. Elliot, my son, is really into soccer right now. And every time there's a goal, he goes, goal! And then, like, when it's a shot that is really close, he'll be like, oh! So he's really into soccer on TV right now. He's loving the Euros and he's loving Copa America.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. I mean, big sports guy already, just 2 years old. Can't get enough of it.
I mean, it's hard to stay outside for a long period because it's 90 degrees out and incredibly humid as well. So we're trying to do as much as we possibly can inside to keep him entertained. And soccer seems to be the way to do it.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Speaking of kicking balls around, I mean, I got done recently actually being outside with one of our friends of the pod, Jimmy Watkins. We played a kickball game today.
There you go.
It was really interesting. Obviously, learning different people's athletic abilities and such. Jimmy holds his own, man. He gets around, and I know we're gonna get into another rendition of Hey Chris, and there may be some questions about our athleticism in there, but I want to get your thoughts on something before we get into those questions from our subtexters. Chris, there was kind of an interesting trade today that happened between the Chicago Bulls and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we're talking about Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. I don't know about you, but I looked at this trade and was like, OKC just got away with a big one. What was your thoughts on this?
First of all, I can't believe I did not get the invite for kickball. I was in a co-ed kickball league for about 8 straight years down in the Valley, down in the Metro Parks, won multiple championships. If they would have named it MVP, I probably would have gotten that too, because I catch everything. I just hover around. I run all over the field, shortstop, third base, left field, left center, you name it. It was a lot of fun. Kickball is a blast. There were near fights in our league one year. There was a lot of trash talk that was going on. A lot of people that didn't love me and my aggressive competitive style of play. I once threw a ball at a girl, which you're not supposed to do, but like I did it gently. I was trying to tag her out. I had no other recourse. There was nobody at third base, so like I two-handed pushed it toward her rather than like pegging it at her. But I got reprimanded for that. So I'm just bummed that I didn't get an invite from either you or Jimmy Watkins.
Okay.
You apparently don't know my kickball background. Multiple champions.
I did not know the kickball background. One, phenomenal. Need that. Also, I am the quote unquote asshole in our league for competitiveness. But yeah, I thought you were hanging out with Elliot and didn't want to, interrupt your time with family. But hey, it was crazy because I did hit up Jimmy because I was like, I don't know if you got anything going on, and I know you be going to the gym. So instead of your gym session today, come hit the sauna. Basically, just sit in the sun and see what's going on with this. It's a co-ed league. It was at the Metro Parks, and it's not a real competitive league. There is like another league that's more competitive, but it's just like some friends that I got thrown into. I'm not even in the Facebook group for it. I just get told to keep coming about. But it's a lot of fun. I will definitely send you an invite next time we need more people. But back to basketball.
Yeah. If we must. I'd rather talk about my kickball, my background in kickball. It's also great when it comes to co-ed leagues because the way that you structure your lineup is really important, right? So you put a fast person at the very top of it. It was usually me. I would get on first base, and then whoever the girl was after me would just bunt it, right? And they would try and get her out because girls are allowed to bunt, guys aren't allowed to bunt. So they would try and get the ball from either shortstop or third base, try to get her out, and I would always start off the game by going first to third because I'm super fast. Not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I'm super fast. So I would lead off. A girl would be after me. I would get on base. She would bunt. I would be on third base, and then my buddy would just sacrifice fly, and I would score that way. So we usually got up like 1-0 in every single first inning. And if it wasn't 1-0 in the first inning, everybody was all disappointed. So we can still talk about kickball, but I guess we'll talk about basketball. Alex Caruso.
Wait.
Oh,
Now I'm interested. Now I'm interested because I am like the quote unquote fast guy in our league or whatever, and I'll play shortstop, but today like we didn't have a whole lot of players. So we had one outfielder on each team, a third baseman, a shortstop, second baseman, first baseman, and a pitcher. No catcher. So you had the second baseman or the first baseman, depending on what team and whoever you had playing back, and you had the middle, you had the person playing the outfield playing in center, and then you had me at short play back short, so get everything that goes to left. And it was so irritating for this other team because every time they'd be like, all right, so we literally understand there's one outfielder. We just have to kick it to the grass for all the guys. And it doesn't work like that when you have people that can actually track the ball down. playing middle outfield. I made the joke today earlier. I was like, I trust my hands with my life. Like I don't plan on dropping anything. And I think I turned the first double play of kickball because we were playing on bigger bases today. So it was like people were struggling to get up and down the line. It was a phenomenal time. And yes, we will get to talk about kickball, of course, more so. And it's great to know that I can now send out an invite. And maybe everybody can come play. Elliot can come run the bases and all that good stuff.
Man, I'll be waiting. I love it.
But back to basketball and back to talking about this trade because I don't have nothing else for you for the kickball stuff for today, Chris. But there will be more competitive talk. I promise you that. But thinking of this trade from Alex Caruso to the Oklahoma City Thunder and Josh Giddey to the Chicago Bulls, what did you think? Because people are saying that the Oklahoma City Thunder stole Alex Caruso and that the Chicago Bulls got fleeced. And the Chicago Bulls are also thinking about giving up Zach LaVine. So it could look bad over there in Chicago.
I don't know what the Bulls are doing, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know what their plan is. I can't believe still a couple of years ago they traded multiple first-round picks for Nikola Vucevic just to hover in mediocrity. The fact that they had an asset like Alex Caruso, who was very, very valuable, despite the fact that he's going into the final year of his contract. They could have gotten multiple first-round picks for him throughout the course of this season. Any contender would have been interested in him at the trade deadline, feeling like he was going to be a piece that put them over the top, or he was going to be a piece that was going to allow them to compete in the playoffs because of his two-way ability, especially what he brings on the defensive end of the floor. He's one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. He's one of the best pure defenders in the league. He's going to be in a conversation for all defense every single year that he's eligible to be that. He's that pesky. He's that good. He's that important. He's the ultimate winner. His game translates to winning. The fact that I feel like Sam Presti probably called and he was like, hey, this is my offer. And he just wanted to start negotiations there. And then it was actually accepted, and he was probably floored by it. Because I can't believe that Chicago did not get more for Caruso, given what they could have gotten for him a few months ago or last off season. Because teams have been interested in Caruso for the last year, feeling like he would be available because Chicago, is just hovering around the play-in tournament every single year. They're not a legitimate contender in the Eastern Conference. They're not on the same level as Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, New York, Indiana, Cleveland. So they're battling with like Atlanta and Miami and Brooklyn, and a guy like Caruso could have brought them back a little bit more to jumpstart their rebuild if that's the direction that ultimately they want to go down. So given the offers that were out there last offseason, the offers that were available to them a couple of months ago prior to the trade deadline, for them to only get Josh Giddey, um, man, that's wild to me. I thought for sure there was going to be some draft capital involved. It's definitely a win for Oklahoma City. Giddey was not in their plans. Giddey was getting played off the floor in playoff series. Giddey can't shoot from the outside for all the good things that he does and all the intriguing things that he brings at such a young age. And he can be a really, really fun player. In a 7-game series, his effectiveness is going to be limited. His playing time is going to be limited, just like it was this past playoff run for Oklahoma City. So for them to get a 16-game player in exchange for a guy who was not going to be in their plans in the future, what a win for OKC. And playing against them is going to be a nightmare with Caruso, with Shea, with Lou Dort out there on the perimeter, with Jalen Williams, who is a dog, and Chet Holmgren. Are you kidding me? Scoring against them consistently is just going to be a chore.
I mean, the OKC Thunder were looking for a premier perimeter defender to lock up other guys because you know that Shea's going to be able to contribute on the offensive end. You know Chet is going to be able to hold down the paint. But could you stop guys on the perimeter? Obviously, Jalen Williams and Lou Dort were doing the best that they could on that part, and Shea was up there in steals this year. But knowing what Alex Caruso can do as an on-ball defender, like you mentioned, Chris, it's going to take their entire team to a whole new level, not to mention his playoff standing. So,
right.
With that being said, it is time to get into the next rendition of Hey, Chris. So, Chris, we're going to get into these questions. There's a couple of fun ones, and there are definitely a couple ones that are a little more in-depth. But the first one is from Andrew in Delaware, Ohio. He says, 2 questions for you, Ethan. 1, where would you think Imani Bates would go in this year's draft? And plainly, I still think he'd be in the second round.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if the Cavs didn't draft him, I don't know that anybody else was going to draft him. Maybe they would have somewhere between 50 and in the end of the draft. But, you know, he was a guy who obviously the upside is there. Obviously the allure is there. But there just wasn't a lot of productivity to back it up. There wasn't a profile that was really all that appealing when you mix in some of the off-court stuff and the immaturity and things like that. So I'm with you. I think he's, even though this is a weak draft, it's one of the weaker drafts in the last however many years. I still think he's a second round pick.
And that's like, we don't know what would have happened if he would have stayed in college for another year. Like, based on what we know about Imani Bates, based on what we learned about him in his first season in the G League and a couple of garbage time minutes with the Cavs, I still think he's a second round pick. And that's not me shading Imani. That's me saying that I want to see him go up to his ceiling. That's me saying that I still think there, like Chris said, is room for him to mature. And there are things that he can do better. And I think he's trying to bulk up. He's been posting on social media, as we know he loves to do, about him in the gym, him in the weight room. And I think that's a big part of what he needs going forward. Getting into the gym, getting bigger, getting stronger, being able to play defense against these guys when you're going to be expected at 6'9", 6'10" to guard small forwards, power forwards. There was no shot this past season that Imani Bates was going to bang with some of the better small forwards, that he was going to bang with power forwards. That's not his game. He's an offensive-minded player. And he still can grow in that consistency. Like, we know that he can strap from 3. We know that he can create his own shot. But doing that consistently on a nightly basis, that's what I'm looking for from Imani before we can get into real conversations about him having an impact with the Cavs or if he would have been drafted higher in this draft class.
I
But
also think he
the
got
next
drafted where he
question,
needed to get drafted because I think this is an important point. When it comes to Amani, ever since he was a teenager, he was in the spotlight. There were a bunch of expectations on him. So for him to not have to live up to a first round drafting, like that's important. For him to go to a place like he did in Cleveland, where he could be out of the spotlight, where they didn't need him to turn into something, where it's a luxury pick for a team that just wanted to take a shot on his talent, wanted to see if they could develop him in the G League, like the fact that he didn't go to a place that needed him, that was going to push him too much too soon. I think that was really, really important because for Amani to be successful, if he's going to make it in the NBA, Ethan, he's got to be developed properly. He's got to learn how to play team basketball. He's got to learn how to play to a specific role. He's got to be in a system, in a place where he can play through his mistakes. And for him to be in the G League, that allowed him those valuable reps, that allowed him that valuable playing time, that allowed him valuable coaching, that allowed him valuable opportunities to learn a different way to play through his mistakes. Like if he would have been a first round pick, um, all of the things that come with that could have been detrimental to him. So I think the kind of development he needs is what you usually look at from a second round pick. If he makes it, he makes it. If he doesn't make it, he doesn't make it. Right. Um, he's still really, really young. There still is untapped potential there, but there aren't the same expectations that kind of took his joy of the game away from him at such a young age. And I think this is a really, really good spot. Even if he doesn't grow into a reliable NBA player, I think this is a really, really good spot for him to grow into a man, and that's a pro. That's really, really important for somebody like Amani, given his background and given everything that happened while he was in college and in high school.
yeah, and I think it's difficult for Amani, especially because he has pride. He's been the guy for multiple years in his career, and then you see Craig Porter Jr. come onto the scene and do what you might have expected yourself to do. And obviously, we knew how close Craig and Amani were. They were both on two-way contracts at the beginning of the season, and then Craig rose to the occasion, got more opportunities, and is now a full-time roster spot for the Cavs. But I think you also get to learn, in Amani's case, from that situation and learn what Craig did. He didn't do too much. He didn't do too little. He did what was asked of him, and that helped his case.
Yeah.
But the next question from Andrew is, what are the chances that Luke Travers makes it over to the NBA this coming season? Thanks for what you do. Shout out to Andrew.
So I was talking to somebody who was very, very close to Luke at one point throughout the course of the season. I don't remember where it was, but it was late in the season. We were in Los Angeles, and I said, "Is Luke an NBA player?" And the person that I was talking to, that has watched him play, that has been around him, seen his work ethic, and all that kind of stuff, said unequivocally yes, but probably not yet. I still think he needs to grow. I think he needs to evolve his game. I think he needs to become a better, more reliable outside shooter. Luke is the kind of guy who does a lot of things really, really well. And I do think he wants to come to the NBA. I think he's itching for it, but there's just not a spot for him right now for this particular team. And I just don't think the Cavs are in any hurry to bring him over, especially when they understand that there are still aspects of his game that he needs to continue to work on. But he has a really good understanding of how to play. He impacts winning. He can defend. He can play make a little bit. He has gotten better from everything that I've been told. He continues to get stronger. He continues to work on different aspects of his game that the Cavs have wanted him to work on, and he's playing against really, really good players in Australia, guys that have either been in the NBA or guys that are probably going to be in the NBA or guys that probably would be in the NBA but prefer to stay in Australia. Like that's a good league that he's playing in. That's good competition that he's playing against. So there are people inside this organization and outside the organization that have been impressed with his growth and his development, and they do believe that he is an NBA player in some capacity. But I just don't think that there's any rush to have it happen, even though Luke wants it to happen.
All right, so the next question comes from Chuck in Youngstown. He asked blatantly, who picks the assistant coaches for the Cavs, the head coach or the front office? And Chris,
Yeah,
I think we've talked about.
Go ahead.
Hmm?
Go
I
ahead.
think we've talked about this a couple times. Knowing that this front office likes to be hands on, but they also want the head coach to allow them to have their selections. It's just going to be a conversation between the two parties to figure out what is best for the Cavs and what they think they need, especially because we've talked about the fact that the
Right.
Cavs could go and get their what they think to be their top option and then bring on their number two as the top assistant coach, depending on the schemes and the style of their play and what they want to do this next season.
No doubt. And look, whoever the coaches that the Cavs pick out of this search, they're going to have a big role in terms of assembling their own staff. They have to have people that they can trust. They have to have people that they believe in. They have to have people that they can delegate to, and that they have either been around in the past or they have heard good things about and want to be on the staff, whatever the case may be. If it's James Borrego, who knows? Maybe he's going to try and bring some guys that were with him in New Orleans, or maybe he's going to bring some guys that were with him in Charlotte back in the day. If it's Kenny Atkinson, maybe he's going to try and pull from various spots that he has been to. But I do need to point this out because I think it's important. There are coaches from JB Bickerstaff's staff that are still employed by the Cavs, that are still doing things for the Cavs. Either they're running pre-draft workouts, or they were overseas with Donovan Mitchell on his Europe vacation. But there are still guys that the Cavs front office from JB's staff that the Cavs front office like and believe in and may want to keep for the next coach. So I just want to point that out, that not everybody from JB's staff is gone, out of the building, dismissed completely. There are some guys that are still there, that are still working for the team, that are still doing things to prepare for the NBA draft or help some of these Cavs players continue to develop, work on different aspects of their game in the off season. There are still some around that there are people in the front office that would prefer to keep if whoever the coach is open to that idea.
Yeah, Chris, and I mean, we talk about the importance of this head coaching search, but also the assistant coaches. And Chuck asked, are there any notable names we should keep an eye out for as assistant coaches, depending on if they bring in different people?
Yeah, so I think one's really really interesting, just given the situation. So Fred Vinson was on the New Orleans Pelicans staff this past year. He left the Pelicans after this year to join Monty Williams in Detroit. Well, Monty's not there anymore. And a big reason why Fred Vinson left New Orleans is because of his previous relationship with Monty, because he wanted to work alongside Monty. Well, now that Monty's not there, obviously the Pistons are going to look at the situation the same way that the Cavs are. Maybe we keep some guys, maybe we don't keep some guys. But I think that's a name to watch, especially if it's going to be James Borrego. And Fred Vinson would be, I think, important for the Cavs. And I think that would be something that would be beneficial to the Cavs. Again, if, Detroit allows that, if Detroit changes everything with their coaching staff, and if Fred Vinson would be interested in coming here to Cleveland, if it's James Borrego, because they coached together in New Orleans. He is known as kind of like a shot doctor. He is somebody who has helped the shooting form, the shooting mechanics of a lot of different New Orleans Pelicans. And I was talking to somebody from the Pelicans organization, that speaks so highly of Fred Vinson and the work that he has done with Herb Jones, the work that he has done with Zion Williamson. Um, it's for the Cavs, if they bring back Isaac Okoro, that would be beneficial. As they continue to develop Evan Mobley into a reliable perimeter threat with a reliable outside shot, having somebody like that would be important, I think. So to me, that's one name to keep an eye on. And it's also like really, really hard when it comes to trying to peg these things because some guys are in really good situations and they aren't necessarily willing to leave those situations unless it's for um, some kind of job advancement, some kind of promotion. So, like, I don't know, would Sam Cassell leave Boston? Hard to say. Uh, would Sean Sweeney, somebody who is going to be looked at as a potential coaching option for the Detroit Pistons, would he be willing to leave Dallas? I don't know. Would somebody on the San Antonio staff be willing to leave Pop and reunite with James Borrego? James Borrego spending so much time in San Antonio. I don't know. Usually you have to give those guys a little bit of an incentive to move from one situation to another if it's not for a boost of a head coach. If it's just from one assistant role to another assistant role, it would have to be, okay, I'm going from the back of the bench to the front of the bench, or I'm going from assistant coach to associate head coach, or I'm getting some other kind of incentive to do that. But Fred Vinson would be the name that stands out to me, especially if it's James Borrego.
I think it's also interesting because we learned of the JJ Redick official agreement to his contract today, and Sam Cassell was on the list of names that people were thinking of could jump ship and go and be an assistant for JJ because we understand how important it is for him to have a decent assistant coach resume when it comes to people that can help him because he's never coached at any capacity to this point. But that's going to be interesting because just like the Lakers were in kind of the same search of head coaches, they're also going to be in a similar search when it comes to assistant coaches, depending on, like Chris says, who the Cavs decide to let go and who they decide to pursue in this different opportunities, especially after they figure out who the head coaching job or who gets that job is going to be. And that's the first domino to fall. And after that, everything else should fall into place.
But usually it's
question.
It's like relationship oriented. Because if you think about it, JB Bickerstaff brought Greg Buckner, and there was a built-in relationship between JB and Greg Buckner, and JB Bickerstaff was able to take JJ Outlaw out of the situation that he was in. JJ had experience in Los Angeles. JJ had experience in Memphis. JB and JJ Outlaw were very, very close. So Outlaw was willing to join JB in Cleveland and leave his previous stop because they're basically family members. And when JB went searching for other assistants as the years went on, he went and he got Sidney Lowe. He went and he got Luke Walton, and a lot of those guys, I would say like every single one except for maybe one on the Cavs coaching staff that was a holdover, Dan Giroux. All those guys had a previous relationship, either a personal relationship or a working relationship with JB Bickerstaff. So I would expect the same kind of situation for whoever it is the Cavs hire as their coach.
All right, Chris, I promised some competitiveness, and I did not lie. Frank in Cincy says, who's winning one-on-one in basketball between you, mentioning me, and Chris? If age is too much of a factor, go prime versus prime. Woo, boy. I don't know, man. So first of all, let's think about this strategically and like we would as basketball analysts as we are. I'm 5'8". You're like 5'10".
Yeah.
Okay. So size isn't too big of an element in that.
It's
Um,
no, it's not.
speed, I think if we're going right now, I think I got you a little bit. But prime versus prime, you said you had wheels. I believe it. I believe it. But I know I also was up there. So I don't know. I'm a competitive guy. I did play basketball rec league. When I got to Cleveland, I played basketball like just for cardio when I was in DC. So it's not like I'm too rusty. So I don't know. I'd take me. I think I'd take me in a lot of things against a lot of people. So it's not just Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't want this to come across as cocky, but I'm always gonna bet on me. I'm pretty comfortable in my abilities. Um, I shoot around in the driveway constantly. I go to the parks and I play there. I go to rec centers and in the past, and I've played there. I was actually playing against my neighbor. She is, what is she, like 10, 11 years old, something like that. She challenged me to horse, then she challenged me to giraffe, then she challenged me to penguin. I think she got a letter, maybe, possibly. I think that's what she got on me. But I'm pretty confident in my abilities, especially when it comes to the basketball court.
He said he's a smooth shooter, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I got from that. But
Oh,
I'm not gonna
yeah.
lie. I'm definitely a 3 and D kind of player. More leaning towards the defensive acumen, but I definitely like if my shot is hitting, it's hitting. But I'm more of a facilitator on the offensive end, and then put me on the best scorer on the defensive end, and we will get to work. So, but
No,
I don't
I'm
know.
just going to
I
score.
think Chris and I are.
There's no
Yeah, I
facilitating
think
with
me and Chris.
Megan at this point. No.
That's fair. I think Chris and I are both very competitive, and I think this is probably the most civilized conversation you guys are gonna get about this conversation. So we're gonna move back to the questions from the subtexters about other hoops, unfortunately. But here is the next one coming from Brian from San Diego. It's a little bit of a long one, but here we go. He says, are you surprised that after firing JB Bickerstaff, after a season of improvement, that the front office did not already have the desired replacement coach lined up? I'm shocked that we are going through this and ending up with guys like James Borrego or Kenny Atkinson. The only possible rationale is if Mitchell required a change. What do you think? I think we talked about this on a recent podcast about Donovan Mitchell's involvement or his leaning into the decision for J.B. Bickerstaff. Even Marcus Morris Sr. said it on the radio when he was talking about J.B. Bickerstaff. Seemed like he just outlived his welcome in Cleveland, and he was a guy that kind of lost the locker room at the end of his tenure there, and that had a feel for why he is not with the Cavs anymore. They also knew that they wanted to take a next step, and JB did not seem like the guy to do that.
I also think this wasn't the off season where there's an obvious candidate waiting to be hired. I think there was one. It was Mike Budenholzer, and Philadelphia scooped him up quickly. Or Phoenix scooped him up quickly. Excuse me. After they made the decision to move on from Frank Vogel, that felt like a situation where they knew the replacement already, and they already had him lined up. But beyond him, there just wasn't that other guy that was out there waiting. Um, if the Cavs were going to make a coaching change, if they felt like that was the right decision moving forward, and I do think it was, because I do think in their mind they felt like they had to do something um, to increase their chances of Donovan Mitchell re-signing long term. It was something that was going to take a long search, just like the Lakers. they had a long search. They made the decision to fire Darvin Ham in May, and they just hired JJ Redick today. So it was going to be a process. There's a lot of information that the Cavs have to go through, just like other teams have to go through. And it's not surprising to me that it has taken a while because there isn't a no brainer candidate out there. There are guys that are appealing, no doubt, but each one of those guys that is also appealing, there are some questions about them, right? So there's a lot of background that you have to dig into. There are a lot of phone calls that you have to make. As I've talked about so many times on this podcast, I've written about for cleveland.com. The Cavs have called players that have played for Kenny Atkinson and James Borrego and Mike Nori. They have called their contacts in front offices that have been with all those different guys. Chris Quinn as well from the Miami Heat, Johnny Bryant as well from the Knicks. They have done as much digging into these candidates as possible because there's a lot of information to gather, because there are a lot of questions to ask, because this is a really, really important hire for the Cavs because of everything that's at stake for them this offseason when it comes to Donovan Mitchell's future. But as I've talked about, Donovan has had conversations with some of these coaching candidates. One of them I know for sure, and he came away in that conversation very impressed. And it was a long conversation with the candidate who was telling him his ideas for offense, his philosophies, what he envisions for the combination of Donovan and Darius together, what he envisions for the core four if they remain intact, what he envisions for ways to operate practices throughout the course of the season, like all of those kinds of things that you talk to players about, that you talk to the front office about. You have to get as much information as possible. You have to build as much of a connection as possible. You got to make sure that it's the right fit for your organization and for the situation that you're about to be in. So there are a lot of different things that this front office has to parse through with these candidates. And this is, if you do the coaching search properly, and if you do it in a way where you don't already have the next candidate lined up, it's going to take weeks. It's going to take a month and a half. These things do take a while because there's just so much information that you have to gather. And the other thing is scheduling stuff, right? Kenny Atkinson was overseas doing some coaching stuff. He's still a member of the Golden State Warriors coaching staff. So he was overseas and he had to come into town. The Cavs are still doing stuff when it comes to pre-draft. They're holding workouts at Cleveland Clinic Courts. So they're trying to schedule everything. They're trying to balance everything. They're trying to get these candidates into town, get in touch with them over Zoom. And it's just a process that typically takes a long time.
And another subtexter wanted a little bit of a follow-up to that question, and he said, is it an option or a possibility that they like their current candidates, but they aren't in love with them? Or in typical Dan Gilbert fashion, is there someone out there in like a mystery box candidate like Bill Self, Tom Izzo, that he is going to spring on us and then hire James Borrego or Atkinson as the lead assistant?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Dan Gilbert has always been a wild card in this organization. Dan Gilbert is somebody who is very hard to predict. Dan Gilbert is somebody who the way he feels one day is not necessarily the way that he feels the next day. I'm told that there was a meeting scheduled between Dan Gilbert and members of the Cavs front office on Wednesday. Yeah, I don't know for sure that meeting took place. I don't know if that meeting was pushed to today, if it was pushed to tomorrow. I don't know. I just know that there was a meeting scheduled with the front office and Dan Gilbert, and that led me to believe that things were getting closer when it came to naming a next head coach for the Cavs. But like I said, I can't confirm that meeting did definitely happen. But when you're talking about Dan, with any decision in this organization, he's going to be involved in it. And he can be very, very difficult to predict. And it would not surprise me in any way, Ethan, if he had somebody in his own mind that he wanted this front office to interview, or that he really, really liked, that he wanted to introduce into this coaching search. Because when it comes to Dan, anything is possible. That's how it has been ever since he has been running this organization. Anything is possible.
To quote Kevin Garnett, anything is possible. But the next question that I got is also about the coaching search, and I just got two more for you, Chris. Is Monty Williams an option for the Cavs? Why was he fired? And would that matter to the Cavs? I mean, why was he fired? The Detroit Pistons had one of the worst seasons in league history. He
They got
like
worse.
the Pistons were, yeah, they were the bottom of the barrel of the NBA last season. They had some aspirations going into the year. And I mean, if I'm Monty Williams, I'm not too mad. I just got fired by two different orgs that almost had me been getting $100 million for both contracts. And now I get to sit down and figure out who's next and who wants me. But Chris, what do you think about the viability of Monty Williams as the next head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I don't think so. Everything that I've heard on that front is that it's a no, in that the Cavs are pretty far down into this process, that it would be a complete shock to a lot of people around the NBA if Monty Williams found a way to get himself involved in this search. I don't think the Cavs view him that highly to change their plans significantly just to give him an opportunity at this job. And I also get the sense from talking to people inside and outside the organization that the Cavs feel good about the guys that they have talked to. The Cavs feel good about the candidates that are available this offseason. The Cavs feel good about this search that they have conducted. And from everything that I've heard, they have done things slightly differently than what they did 5 years ago when they landed on John Beeline. I think they learned some things from that search. I think they learned some things that are important to ask throughout the process or do throughout the process. And I think they learned some things of what not to do throughout that process, because the John Beeline hiring was a complete and utter failure for this organization. And it was a disaster, and it was an embarrassment. So I have heard from people inside and outside the organization that they are doing things a little bit differently than what they did 5 years ago, which is a good thing, um, because I think they had to learn from those mistakes. And I think being this far down the road with a lot of these candidates and feeling good about the process that you were going through, introducing Monty Williams into that when his resume doesn't warrant that, I think that would be a mistake for this organization. I think that would be them operating the way that they did 5 years ago. And the other thing, like, part of the reason why Monty was fired too, if we're trying to be fair, number one, they did regress. They won 17 games the year before. They won 14 this past year. Um, and he did not have a good year from a coaching standpoint whatsoever. There are two other things. Um, there is wonder around the NBA whether Monty even wants to coach this year. Before he went to Detroit, he was hesitant on coaching because he was dealing with some personal stuff, including his wife who had cancer. So, not that he had to be convinced to take the Detroit job, but he was fully prepared to sit out the entire year before he took that job. So he may just want time to regroup, get everything set with his family, wrap his mind around the fact that he just got fired again by the Detroit Pistons when he thought he was going to be there this coming year. And he may just sit out coaching or not be a head coach this year because he just doesn't want to. The other thing is, anytime there there are new people in charge of a situation, like is the case in Detroit, there's always the possibility of a coach getting fired. There's always the possibility of those people coming to the organization and saying, I want my own guy. I want a different voice. I want I have a different vision for where I want this organization to go and what I want this organization to be that doesn't entirely match the vision that Monty Williams had when he took over the year before and he laid out that vision to the previous front office. And there are no emotional ties between the new people running the show in Detroit and Monty because they didn't hire him. So it's a lot easier for new people to make those kinds of changes. And so I think that's another reason why Monty was fired beyond, the things that you already mentioned there, Ethan. I would be shocked if the Cavs put him into the search. I just don't think it's going to happen.
All right, Chris. Well, I thought we had one more, but I think we've touched on it, so maybe we'll make it really quick. This next subtexter, Brandon from Charlotte, asks, he says, I feel like with the roster we had last year, we weren't better than the Celtics. The Magic, 76ers, Pacers, and Knicks are all going to get better. Do you see any realistic moves that would put us in the same tier as the Celtics? And I think we've said it on multiple occasions on this podcast. And not to berate the point, but the Cavs need a second star. Donovan Mitchell needs help on the offensive end of the ball. He needs somebody to step up at least, or the Cavs need to go get somebody that will also be able to contribute. And whether that's Brandon Ingram, whether that's Paul George, OG Anunoby, all these guys that we've talked about on this podcast, sure, there are some that are better fits and are better options or whatever, but these guys are the ones that are on either free agency or might be signing trades or might be just overall trades during the offseason that would be viable to make an impact on the Cavs. Sure, there are smaller names that could help in the margins of things, but the Cavs need a bigger name to take the next step, at least in my opinion.
Or Darius evolves into that guy consistently. Darius goes back to being all-star Darius rather than having the year that he had this past year. Or Evan Mobley evolves greatly on the offensive end of the floor, comes back in year 4 a completely different player, and he becomes Donovan Mitchell's running mate. I don't think it can be lost that Game 5 against the Celtics, following that game in the visitors' locker room, like Donovan pulled Evan Mobley aside and basically said, that is who you are. That is who you need to be. I think there is part of Donovan, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but I think there is part of Donovan that understands some of the limitations of Darius and wonders in his own mind, is my best chance of a running mate moving forward number 4? That guy who looked so good at various points throughout the course of that series against the Boston Celtics. In one of those games against the Celtics, we had people nationally saying, if Evan Mobley plays like he did in this game, then the Cavs are going to push this to Game 7 against the Celtics. When they ignored the fact that Evan had those sporadic moments, but they just weren't consistent to that level. And if Evan played to that level every single night, he would be an MVP candidate. and he's not there yet, right? But what if he gets there? I think there's part of Donovan that honestly believes that the best chance that he has for a running mate moving forward is Evan Mobley and not Darius Garland. So one of those two things is possible. It is possible that a new coach takes over and they have different ideas for how to function offensively that makes it work better between Donovan and Darius, that makes it work better from an offensive standpoint, that gets more out of this team from an offensive side of things than JB Bickerstaff could, did, or ever would, right? That's part of the reason why you make a coaching change, because you feel like in some areas you came up short. And I think if you pulled anybody inside the organization privately, any player in that locker room, they would all say that JB wasn't the guy to get more out of this offense, that he was given an opportunity. He was given basically an ultimatum last offseason. Make this offense more dynamic. Make this offense more creative. Make this offense more diverse. Make it so it wasn't the way that it was in the playoff series against the New York Knicks. And he didn't do it. And I think there's a belief that some other coach out there can, based on the talent that is in that locker room. So beyond what you already said, going out and making a significant trade to see if you can reconfigure the roster, to see if you can make it fit better, to see if you can balance it out a little bit better than what it is right now. The other option is, either Evan Mobley or Darius Garland becomes the running mate that Donovan Mitchell needs, the consistent second option that Donovan Mitchell needs on the offensive end of the floor.
And when I said somebody needs to step up, that's exactly what I meant. You articulated that perfectly, Chris, and that is why you get paid the big bucks. But
I mean, think about
that
this.
being said,
Milwaukee's got Dame and Giannis. Boston's got Jalen and Jason. Philly's got Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Denver has Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. The Suns have, their guys. The Clippers have their guys. It was Steph and Clay for so many years. It's LeBron and AD. You got to have two. You got to have two that you can rely on a nightly basis and feel like you know exactly what you're going to get. Luka has Kyrie, right? You can't. A one-man show doesn't work in today's NBA. It just doesn't. So Donovan needs more from his teammates if it's not going to come externally. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. And we've talked about Evan Mobley at an abundance, being the guy that we think we've seen the most from that has the potential to take that jump. And like you mentioned with that Boston series, Evan Mobley showed glimpses of that. And he got enough and to show that to Donovan Mitchell to be like, well, I'm here. Just tell me what else you need. And he said, that guy, that's what I need. And so I think that is a great representation of this team and where this team could be going forward. Do I still think they need a true two-way wing to be able to take the next steps that they need, even if Evan Mobley takes those steps? Sure. But do I think that having Evan Mobley play at that level consistently would help? Yes. And it could help significantly to prove me wrong. And I would not be upset about that. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and me by subscribing to Subtext. Yes, we are getting to the end of this coaching search soon. It's going to happen at some point. And if you want to get the information to your phone immediately, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy, but we can tell you that whoever signs up sticks around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.